Okay, so now you know your big why. Now what? Stay tuned. Over and over, you hear people saying you need to find your big why. But what happens when you find your big why? What do you do then? That's what I'm going to explore in this video. If you haven't already, please click subscribe to this YouTube channel so you can get these videos on a regular basis. Hey, this is Damon Cart from NLP Gym on this gorgeous day in Santa Cruz, California. Know your big why. I hear that so much in personal development and self-help, and to tell you the truth, it goes back much further than that. One of the first philosophers I ever read is Friedrich Nietzsche, and actually you can trace the roots of personal development and self-help as we know it today to a lot of the things that he wrote about. One of the things that he harped on a lot about was values, which is what I talk a lot about. I talk about values elicitation. And he also said, and I'm paraphrasing, I don't remember the exact quote, but he also said that any why is stronger than any how, or any why trumps any how. A lot of what we hear about in personal development today is parts of his philosophy distilled and made more relevant to today's society. So why is it so important to know your why? If you don't know your why, you're not going to attempt the how. You have to feel a sense of wanting to do something or having a value you're looking to fulfill. And like I said, I've done a few videos on values elicitation. I'm not going to really go into that here, but you can search my other videos for that. I'll link one to this video about it, because it is super important. You need to know why you're doing what you're doing. Your values, when you know your values are kind of like your headlights. It lets you know where you want to go. And then at that point, all you need to do is figure out the rest. Now, that's the other piece that goes missing, I find, in a lot of other technologies, a lot of other types of trainings, a lot of personal development stuff. We like to listen to the inspirational stuff, the stuff that makes us feel good when we listen to it, the stuff that motivates us. But a lot of times that's kind of the high we're looking for, and then we don't go any further than that. And so people say, well, find your big why, and then everything else will take care of itself. And it just has not been my experience. It's the same thing like with the law of attraction and The Secret, where they say, oh, just visualize this stuff and it's just going to appear. Well, no, it's not. And the truth is you wouldn't want that to happen. If everything you visualize suddenly appeared, that would be a pretty scary world to live in. That'd be a scary reality to live in. You're visualizing all the time. A lot of people don't realize that. They only think that they're visualizing when they're consciously aware that they're visualizing, when they sit down and think of movies or pictures or bright whatever images of what they want. They think that's the only time they're visualizing. That is not true. You're visualizing all the time. That is how you wouldn't be able to recognize your friends if you didn't visualize while you're walking down the street. You've had that happen. You recognize a friend. Well, that's because an internal visualization connected with an external visualization, and then you had a recognition, a familiarity, and you go, oh, okay, there's my friend, or that's how you remember where you're going or how to find places. So it's how you visualize. It's the ways in which you visualize and what your ways of visualizing mean to you that is what creates or manifests what it is you want when you visualize. So when you think about what you want, when you think about your values, when you think about your big why, and by the way, you don't just find your big why and then it's all done and you never have another big why. Your big why is always changing. It's always evolving, especially when you take action. And that's what this video is really about, is taking action on that big why. I've seen people do this, and it just it's really frustrating, especially when I'm coaching people, that they think that that's all they have to do is find this big why, and then everything takes care of itself. They don't have to do anything, and then it's 10 years later and they're still wondering why they haven't achieved what they wanted, or they're not living the life that they wanted. Finding the big why is only the first step. Finding the big why is also an ongoing process. That's the two most important things you could take away from this video. Your big why is the first step, and your big why is an ongoing, evolving process. So many things, and you've had enough experiences in your life to know this. There have been so many things that you wanted, and as soon as you went after them, and it's not so much that it was hard. Sometimes things are hard and we quit. But sometimes things they're not what we expected. You go after your big why, and then you realize, well, that's not really what you wanted. You wanted something else. That's a good thing to know, but you would never know it unless you took action on moving toward that big why. I have a big why for this NLP channel and my business and everything that I do, and I'm constantly discovering or evolving and galvanizing and distilling what that big why is. I suddenly had an epiphany just recently. In order to serve my big why, I need to take on a new project coming up, which I'll announce later. That'll be coming at the beginning of next year. And so my next step was, how do I do this? So just because your why is important and more important than your how, and I hate to even say that, it's not that it's more important, it's that you need to know why, you need to know what you're after before you go after it. The how is just important because without the how, you go nowhere, you don't do anything, you don't take any action, you don't have a roadmap, a strategy. So you discover your big why, and then you find out how. And again, just like the big why, the how is an ongoing process of evolving and trying new things. People often say, well, I found my big why, I tried the how, it didn't work, and so I'm frustrated and I'm depressed and I'm down, I'm wounded, I'm hurt, and it doesn't work. Well, no, things rarely work that way. You have to try things, and as you try, you start learning, you start layering, you start evolving that why you started to do this to begin with. I have so many teachers, mentors, coaches, some who I interact with individually and in person, and some who I've never met, who I just buy their programs, and I learn from them. And all of them are selling their solution as if it's the one-stop shop. And I understand that, that's marketing. But there's no one-stop shop. No one thing is going to work for everyone. So I learn from one person how to do something, and then I find somebody who's doing sort of the same thing, but they have a different take on it. And so maybe 40% of their program works for me, and then this other person, 50% of their program works for me. And so I'm just finding more and more of what works for me, and then letting go of the stuff that's not working for me. And this is part of executing your how. So if anyone's telling you you only need to find your big why, and that's it, know that that's not true. The how is just as important. The how makes it possible. The how makes it happen. So does the why. The why points you in the right direction. So it's not just about finding your big why. The next step is the next step. It's like, okay, what do I do now? Take any action. Start somewhere. Take a step. The first step in your how could just be, I need to go learn from somebody. I need to go learn how to do this. The one thing you do not want to do is, when you discover your big why, is to not take action, or to wait, or to think, oh, well, I will do that when, or I can't do that right now, I'll do it this other time, or I'm waiting for something. If you're waiting, I like to say this, if you're waiting, you're dying. If you're waiting, nothing is happening. Do something, and it doesn't mean jump out there and go 100% and you know, throw money at something, or it doesn't mean those things. It means do something now, take some action, get that momentum going. Without that, your big why will stay just an idea. And there's a guy named Gary Vaynerchuk, you probably have heard of him, and he's a little crass, and that's one of the reasons why I like him. He's very direct, and one of the things he says is, he's like, don't tell me about your good ideas. Your good ideas are meaningless to me unless you're executing them, unless you're taking action, unless you're making them happen. Your good ideas are just as meaningless as anything else that doesn't exist. He's a little harsh. I like ideas, and I like to come up with good ideas, and I like to listen to people's ideas, but there's a lot of truth in what he's saying. If you don't execute that, if you're not manifesting that, if you're not creating your ideas, if you're not bringing them into reality, they're really useless and meaningless. They're just hanging out in your head. And a lot of people, I see this all the time, a lot of people don't execute their ideas because they fall in love with the idea so much that they're afraid to take action on it, because they're afraid that their good idea isn't such a good idea. They're afraid that that good idea is going to fail. Don't ever be afraid of your ideas failing. That's the next step in creating even better ideas. That's the next step in strengthening who you are. Every time you have a failure like that, you learn a little bit more, you get a little bit stronger, and you come up with better ideas. That's how better ideas are created. first ideas are rarely that great of ideas. They may seem that way when you come up with them, but often it's just not the case. It's by destroying your ideas in some cases. And don't destroy your ideas just to do it. Destroy them in reality. Apply that idea to reality and see what happens. Let reality destroy your ideas, and out of that will forge some of the best ideas you've ever come up with, some of the best whys you've ever come up with, because you're going from the why to the how and back to the why, and you just go back and forth and do this, and it's just a process and evolution. And that's more important than any one good idea. That's more important than just knowing your big why. And then some people do the opposite. Some people just work, and they don't have a vision. They just, oh, if I just do this work, then everything's gonna be okay. If I do hard work, then I'll just deserve the success that I want. Unfortunately, that's not true either. I wish that were the case. I tried that many, many times. I worked for years and years off of an idea that I never evolved. I just worked, and I thought, okay, if I just work, the idea will work. No, you gotta be evolving that idea. You gotta be constantly evaluating the work that you're doing to make sure that it's actually getting you to where you wanna go. And then along the way, you also have to keep asking yourself, is this what I want? Nietzsche would say that this is the reevaluation of your values, and that you should be constantly reevaluating your values, which is another way of saying constantly reevaluating your big why. And I hope you have a lot of big whys. I hope there's not just one. Have 3 to 5 big whys. Tell me about your big whys and what your hows are. Tell me about your big whys and what you're doing to make that big why happen. Comment below. When you go to my website, nlp-gym.com, you'll find some free NLP training as well as some free hypnotic inductions. Also, follow me on Facebook. You'll get real-time updates on upcoming workshops that I'm doing, online trainings that I'm doing, and possibly even talks that I'm giving in your area. And as I mentioned, if you haven't already, please subscribe to this channel, hit the bell so you get notifications. And if you like this video, please click like. Take care.